and gluten-free bread is ridiculously expensive, super small. My daughter complains it has to be toasted to taste good, and this recipe does not. So
intentionally living, intentionally eating, intentionally growing where we are.
Welcome back to the Padilla Family Homestead. My name is Jennifer. Today we are here to talk about our January goal. If you are new and you didn't see my year goals, 2024's year's goals, we're doing a new skill every month, and so 12 new skills we're trying to learn, and January's was probably the most intimidating for me, and that was learning how to make gluten-free sandwich bread. And man, we have failed this so many times in the past, so bad that the loaf of bread was as hard as a brick, and we were like hitting it against the wall, and I was afraid it was going to do damage to the wall instead of damage to the bread, because it didn't budge on the bread at all. So did we nail it or did we fail it? Let's talk about the gluten-free bread and kind of some things we've learned. Now, I am going to be putting a blog post down below, and it'll have the link to the recipe that I used. It is not my recipe. I'm linking to somebody else's recipe. And it's going to have a link for the sandwich bread recipe, but it's also going to have a link to the focaccia, gluten-free focaccia bread that we made in January as well, which was super delicious. So first I want to talk about a couple of things that I have learned while making this. I did a few edits and into the recipe, and so I want to make sure I talk about those and whether we obviously nailed it or failed it. And I'm going to say we nailed it. We found this recipe, and I will tell you, we started with the focaccia first, and it called for an ingredient called psyllium husk. And I will tell you, this is the weirdest stuff on the planet. Like, this is what gives, like, in place of gluten, right? So it's this little tiny little seed husks, and you put them in a measuring cup with some water and the oil, and this stuff turns into this gelatinous glob of whatever. And at first, like, if you're just used to making like regular sourdough and stuff like that, you're like, that's going in my bread. But it was a game changer. It was a game changer. So just be prepared to have the blob come alive and make delicious bread. So that was an interesting thing to work with. It is a pricier ingredient. We get ours from Azure standard, and if you are going to be making a lot of bread, I would buy in bulk to save a little bit of money on it. But it is something that your first time out, you want to try it, make sure it's what you like, and then go from there. This will be something with doing the gluten-free bread that my daughter will have to be getting in bulk to make it affordable. So the psyllium husk was a game changer. That is, like, I've never used it before January, and we bought it a while ago to use it, and we never tried it. So it was kind of a fun science experiment, and it was amazing. I subbed in the recipe. We didn't have potato starch, and so I used arrowroot powder instead of potato starch, and that was great. And then in the other portion where it said to use tapioca flour or arrowroot flour, I used tapioca flour because I had that, and that way we had the balance of flavors. And for the bulk flours, we used sorghum flour. Whatever it called for quinoa, and we didn't use quinoa, we used sorghum in place of that. So we just did sorghum and the brown rice flour. And the first time I made it, I put olive oil in the pan because I did it as a loaf. This can be used as an artisan bread, this recipe, or in a loaf pan to make sandwich bread. And the first time I did it, I used oil in the pan and tried to help it like release from the pan, and it still got stuck really bad. And I remember when making sourdough focaccia that they call for oil in the pan, but the thing that works is a thin layer of butter. For some reason, butter is what helps it to release from the pan. So when I made the second loaf of sandwich bread, I put a thin coat of butter into the glass baking pan, and then I put a little bit of oil, and it just popped straight out. It was amazing. I didn't take a knife to like pry it or anything like that. So it popped straight out, and it's great. So neither the oil or the butter was called for. They used parchment in the Dutch oven, but I wanted something in the loaf pan to help it to release better. So those are some of the edits that I made, and it worked. The butter and oil combo is amazing, and my daughter loved it. I'm going to be popping in clips if I haven't already. I'll be popping in clips right here that I took of us making the sandwich bread, and then also of me slicing it what that looked like, and then my daughter trying it because she was like, "This is amazing." How's it taste? It tastes like bread.
I actually kind of feel normal right now.
Does it
Not a normal occurrence.
does it need toasting?
Not at all. And if you're gluten-free, you know that pretty much every bread you'll ever have needs to be toasted, or else it crumbles and falls apart.
It's very good.
It's
Tear
like
it.
the most.
Can you tear it? Show the texture. Let me see. Look at that.
Like it actually had resistance.
Yeah. She just loved it. I will say that of all the breads that we have done in the past, this lady's blog, who we got this from, we've tried 2 of her recipes now, and they were spot on. She gives a lot of descriptions on why certain things, what things kind of not to switch out, and I was really impressed for something that was such a big fear, struggle, a nemesis in the kitchen. I am very, very excited about having these 2. Now we'll switch out our flours here and there, and we're still going to be experimenting with them. The goal is for the month to try something new and to learn a new skill. And gluten-free bread is ridiculously expensive, super small. My daughter complains it has to be toasted to taste good, and this recipe does not. So for us, that's a huge skill to be able to learn something, to teach her how to make bread and have it be cost effective. I haven't done the math on how much all of the ingredients cost, but doing it from home would be the key thing. And I really think it would be the cheapest to mill your own gluten-free flours. We haven't done that. I have a grain mill, but I do all my wheat grains through it. And with her, since she has gone completely gluten-free, I don't want to risk her getting cross-contamination, because anytime she gets that, she's getting really bad stomach problems. So the more she's gone gluten-free, the more she cannot cheat with gluten at all. So We haven't gone that route because it's not worth it to risk that. We would need a second grain mill. But in the future, I've told her that that is something that in the future, to make this more cost effective, she could mill her own rice flour, all of those things, and put them together. If she wanted to make something with oat flour, mill her own oats, and it would be much cheaper and more nutritious to mill what she needed at that time. There's one more thing that I wanted to talk about with this, and that is the one area that it doesn't work for us in, and that is for my husband. Now, he enjoyed the bread. It tasted great. We both really like it. But something that we have noticed, because we've talked about before, that my husband has had type 2 diabetes, and he was on insulin, he was on the Ozempic, and he's been off of all of this medication, and so he's been doing really good, but rice is a nemesis for him. And so making gluten-free bread with rice flour, he had one piece and it spiked his sugars. So just keep that in mind if you have somebody in the household who struggles with sugars. It may be worth trying out different flours first, which we'll be doing other flours. Right now we're going to stick to doing sourdough for the two of us and this gluten-free bread for my daughter, which is fine. It's delicious. She loves it. But it is something to note that if you have somebody in the house who struggles with blood sugar, I do not suggest rice flour if rice is something that spikes them. So it was something that was very apparent pretty immediately. And so I felt like since we're living with intention, we're finding what works for everybody. We're still going to be balancing what breads we're eating and all of that. But this stuff is delicious. It's very good. We just made some for my daughter's school week. So she gets to have sandwiches for school, and she is super excited about that. And we are excited to try all the different ways. So next month's goal, or I guess this month, since we're in February now, is learning how to make deodorant. So make sure that you stick around and find out how that went. If we nailed that or failed it, I have little containers being shipped to us so I can try to make them in little deodorant tubes. So we're excited to try that out. But don't be afraid to learn something new. Learn a new skill. Tackle it. Find the blogs that have the good recipes and find resources that are reliable. We've talked about a little bit about that when I did the collaboration with Roots and Refuge on reliable resources, because there's a lot of blogs that are just written by AI that don't necessarily make a ton of sense. So making sure you're doing due diligence and testing it. I'll tell you these two that I've tested from, I think her name's Bakerita. They were great. And so they'll be linked in my blog below with some of the things that I've changed around and some other pictures. And I hope that this encourages you to get out there and try something new. It's not crazy hard to make this bread. It's just a different process than making regular bread. And it is well worth it. So we will see you on the next video. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe. Comment below if you have a favorite gluten-free sandwich bread. We'd love to keep trying more. It's something that experimenting in the kitchen is something that I'm really enjoying doing. So any of those recipes, we'd love to hear below, and we will see you on the next one.
Intentionally working, intentionally choosing, intentionally loving.